I am Kayson. I am 75 years old, and I have outlived almost everyone I ever loved. But nothing prepared me for the day I returned home unannounced and found my daughter alone, fighting for her life in an ICU room where no one was holding her hand. I returned home unannounced and found my daughter alone fighting for her life in the ICU. I still remember the way the sky looked that afternoon, too bright, almost mocking, the kind of blue that makes you believe everything in the world is fine. I had just flown back from Seattle, where I'd been staying with my older sister. At 75 years old, I move slower, think slower, and pack lighter, but I still carry surprises in my heart. I didn't tell my daughter I was coming home to Austin. I wanted to see her face light up. I wanted her to roll her eyes and say, "Dad, you could have called." I wanted to hear her laugh. Instead, I walked into silence. The house that didn't breathe. Our little blue house always felt alive. Even when empty, it held warmth, the smell of coffee, the faint trace of her lavender perfume, the echo of her son's laughter. But that day, it felt abandoned. The curtains were drawn tight. The mail overflowed. A coffee mug sat untouched, dried residue clinging to its sides. "Elara," I called. Nothing. I checked her bedroom. Empty. Then I saw it. An envelope on the kitchen table. My name written in her handwriting. "Dad." My fingers trembled. At 75, your hands shake from age, but this was different. This was fear. Inside was a letter. "I didn't want to tell you because I know how much you worry. I thought I could manage this on my own. I didn't want to scare you." She had been diagnosed with a rare autoimmune disorder months ago. It had worsened quickly. She had been hospitalized twice already. She hadn't told me. Not once. At the bottom was a hospital name. St. David's Medical Center. ICU. My chest tightened so sharply, I thought I might collapse right there on the kitchen floor. I whispered her name like a prayer. And then I ran. The drive that lasted a lifetime. The taxi ride felt eternal. Traffic lights seemed cruelly slow. I kept checking my watch, an old gold piece my wife gave me before she passed. 75 years old. Too old to lose a child. No parent, no matter how old, is built for that. When the hospital doors slid open, cold air hit my face. The smell of antiseptic wrapped around me like something sterile and merciless. "I see you," I said to the receptionist. "Elara James, I'm her father." My voice cracked on the word father. They made calls. They looked at screens. Then a nurse approached. "She didn't list any emergency contact," she said softly. "She said she didn't want to trouble anyone." Trouble. The word struck like a hammer. Was that what she thought she was? A trouble. The first sight. Nothing, prepares you for seeing your child unconscious. Machines surrounded her bed. A ventilator breathed for her. Monitors blinked with numbers I didn't understand but feared. Her skin was pale. Her lips dry. Her body looked smaller somehow, as if illness had stolen her strength and left only fragility behind. I pulled a chair close. I took her hand. It was cold. "Elara," I whispered, "it's Dad." I hadn't cried in years, not when my knees gave out, not when I buried friends. But that day, tears fell freely. "I'm 75, I said softly. "You don't get to leave before me. That's not the order of things." The machines answered in steady beeps. The weight of silence. As I sat there, memories flooded in. Her first steps, her first heartbreak, the day she became a mother. After her husband died in a car accident, she stood in the hospital hallway and said, "I'll be strong for him. I promise." She had been strong ever since. Too strong. Maybe I praised her resilience so much that she believed she had no right to break. Maybe I raised her to survive, but forgot to teach her how to lean. I leaned forward and pressed my forehead against her hand. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "The doctor's warning." Dr. Mera entered quietly. He spoke carefully. "Her immune system is attacking her organs. We're doing everything we can. The next 48 hours will determine a lot." A lot. Doctors always choose words that sound gentle but mean everything. "Will she wake up?" I asked. "We hope so," he replied. Hope. Such a fragile word in a room full of machines. The longest night of my 75 years. That night stretched endlessly. I talked to her about everything. I told her about Seattle's rain, about how I burned toast without her, about how her son misses her bedtime stories. I reminded her of the time she dressed as a firefighter princess for Halloween and insisted on carrying both a tiara and a plastic axe. "Come back," I said softly. "You still owe me a rematch in checkers." Around 3:17 a.m. something changed. Her finger twitched. Just slightly. I froze. "Elara," I whispered urgently, "if you hear me, squeeze my hand." There was nothing for a moment. Then faint pressure. It wasn't strong, but it was there. I cried like a man who had been drowning and finally found air. The setback. Just when hope began to bloom, her blood pressure dropped the next afternoon. Alarms rang. Nurses rushed in. I was gently guided out of the room. I stood in the hallway, gripping the wall, whispering prayers I hadn't said in 20 years. "I'll trade places," I murmured. "Take my years, I've had 75 of them." Time moved painfully slow. When the doctor finally stepped out, his face was serious, but not defeated. "She's still with us. Still with us." 3 words that felt like a miracle. When her eyes opened. On the 3rd morning, sedation was reduced. Her eyelids fluttered. I stood so quickly my knees protested. "Elara." Her eyes opened halfway. Confusion first. Then focus. Then recognition. Tears slipped from the corners of her eyes. "Dad," she whispered hoarsely once the tube was removed days later. "Yes," I said, leaning close. "Your stubborn 75-year-old father. You weren't supposed to see me like this. And you weren't supposed to fight alone." She looked away, guilt flickering in her tired eyes. "I didn't want to be a burden." I shook my head gently. Love does not calculate burden. The conversation that changed us. When she was strong enough to speak for longer, we talked honestly for the first time in years. "I was scared," she admitted. "After losing him, I couldn't handle the idea of losing you too. I thought if I kept it quiet, I could protect you." I smiled sadly. "You protect me by staying alive, not by hiding." Her hand tightened around mine. "Promise me something, Dad." "Anything. If I ever try to be strong alone again, remind me I don't have to." I kissed her forehead. "Every day. Healing isn't just physical. Recovery took months. Physical therapy, medication, fatigue, pain. But something else healed too. Our silence. We began talking more about fear, about loneliness, about grief. Her son started drawing pictures of the 3 of us holding hands. He taped them to the fridge like trophies. One evening, as she stood in the kitchen again, humming softly while making tea, I realized something. The house felt alive again. It breathed. What I learned at 75. You would think by 75 years old, a man would know everything important. I thought I did. But here is what I learned sitting beside my daughter's ICU bed. Strength without vulnerability becomes isolation. Silence can be more dangerous than illness. Love must be spoken, not assumed. and no one is ever a burden to those who truly love them. If you are suffering quietly right now because you don't want to worry someone, please tell them, call them, let them sit beside you. Because I almost lost my daughter, not only to disease, but to her belief that she had to endure it alone. Today, Elara still battles her condition. There are hard days. There are flare-ups. But there are also mornings when sunlight spills into the kitchen and she laughs at something small and ordinary. And every time I hear that laugh, I close my eyes. I am Kayson. I am 75 years old. And the day I returned home unannounced and found my daughter alone fighting for her life in the ICU was the day I learned that love is not proven by how much you endure alone, but by how bravely you let others stand beside you.